Hi, I'm Jess, the founder of Positive HR.
And I'm Mikey, co-host of the Leadr Lab podcast, where we speak with leaders to learn about what inspires them to help you on your leadership journey.
Together, we'll explore the hearts and minds of leaders. We blend curiosity with insight as we learn firsthand what it takes to be a leader who truly inspires and drives positive change.
Join us as we dive deep into the art and science of human-centered leadership. Welcome to the Leadr Lab.
Hey, Michael, so great to have you on the show today. Now, your career has been nothing short but remarkable, I would say. And I've known you since, we were just talking 2014 or whatever it was, since I tried to recruit and reel you into a job. And since then, your career has just taken off with, I think, something along the lines of a dozen co-founded companies and 15 investments as well. Leadership has come a long way for you since when we first connected all those years ago.
Indeed. What's
your leadership philosophy now, and how has that developed and grown over your career?
Love the question. Thanks for having me on. Certainly, a lot of the time you see commonalities, right? And the commonalities is that you want to have a founder DNA that is consistent in the way that, number one, they're never going to give up, regardless of what happens. They're okay with pivoting and pivoting quickly and smartly and failing very fast and being able to learn along the way. One thing I see very common in great leaders is that they never say no to learning more, right? And so taking advice and bringing really strong advisory team members to the team in specific industries and with specific experience where they can take their advice and really implement that across the business, learn, pivot, and then continuing to do better and take no for an answer is sort of where it's at.
Yeah, amazing. And let's focus on pivoting, because you've gone through a lot of scaling in the businesses you've been part of and still now are a part of. How have you adjusted your leadership style to pivot? What are some of those failures you've found? What are some of the strengths you've found to be able to pivot through all those periods of scaling and change?
I believe business is all about people and bringing the right people more so than ever before. And you would know this, right? More than anyone else. I remember at Openpay in particular, we brought in an executive that used to manage about 50,000 employees under a company called Amdocs, and he's out of Israel. And he was a Shark ex-military, really brought him into Australian market and culture to really disrupt the business. Now, obviously, there were negative consequences as a result, but also there were very positive consequences. We had a CFO that was very risk adverse, and we had a CEO who was that leader who was very hungry and driven and pretty much was ruthless in his approach. Now, it worked to some respect. It also didn't work to some respect in the Australian market. And so the way I looked at leadership and the way I manage leadership is all about getting to know your team, number one, very well, and what makes them tick, and also being able to coach them and assist them in achieving their goals, whether they're personal or career goals or whatever it is, right? So I sit down with all my team members on a very regular basis to understand what their goals are, incentivize them really well to be able to achieve those goals, right? And then be able to coach them through that process. And if I can't, I'll bring the right people to be able to coach them in the right way.
I think you've hit something there around goals, and I know and have known you for a long time, and you're very high performing. It's how you've got to be where you are today, and very ambitious, which is a great quality of yours. How do you balance your personal goals and your personal ambition, which is very high performing as well, with that of your people that perhaps are not as focused on high performance?
Probably the biggest challenge is finding people that are like-minded, that are as driven as you. Like that's a really serious challenge in the Australian market, I find. And so when you find those people, you need to look after them, and you need to look after them very well to make sure that you keep them, right? In terms of talking about balance, it's a word that I have struggled with personally, in the sense that, I've got a very regimented regime. Like I'm up by 4:30. Everything I do is as productive as possible.
4:30 in the morning.
I've got 3 kids now. I don't know if you know, but
wow.
Like to be able to find balance, it's critical to allocate the right times depending on what I've got on, right? And so everything I do has to be at 100% capacity and productivity and efficiency. And I'm very big on that. Now, Some people can't keep up with that pace, and that's okay. But I think it's critical to have people on the team that can also keep up with that pace, but also bring elements to the business that support that pace. I think that's critical. So for me, talking about balance, it's a word I don't take lightly. Having 3 kids now, recognize like how critical it is to spend time with them, right? Because the time just flies. And so I've got a very strict regime where I go, 6 to 8 p.m., for example, no one can touch me. That's my kids'
Family
time.
time.
4:30 to 5:30, I'm at the gym. No one can talk to me, right? So, the world can collapse. I'm there, right? So, and while I'm there, I'm not listening to music. I'm listening to a podcast, for example. So like I'm always consistently improving in every area possible. And it's been very challenging for me to be able to find people that align with that drive.
And you talk about, focusing on people and understanding what makes them tick and having those regular conversations. How do you uncover and get people to open up so that you actually understand not just what's happening on the surface, but actually what's going on for them internally as well, to be able to balance them with their personal values, the business values, the drive, the performance that you expect as well?
Ultimately, it comes down to building strong relationships with people and being a people person. And just getting them to open up by building trust. And trust takes years to build, and reputation takes years to build and seconds to break, right? So I think if you can ultimately be a leader and demonstrate a way forward for those people where they almost look up to you and want your support, right? Then they become all of a sudden more adaptive and more open to listening. And I think taking the time, a lot of the time leaders unfortunately have an agenda in mind. They go in with an agenda and they go, this is how we're going to do things and this is the way it's going to happen. And whether you like it or not, that's the way it is. And I think it's critical these days as a leader, more specifically in the Australian market, is to be very open to adapting and being very open to listening as much as possible. And you want people at the table that have better skills than you in areas of the business that you lack, right? And so I think you need to listen more so than ever before, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the time, leaders don't do that.
And it can be hard as a leader to sit there and be actually open, genuinely open to receiving feedback from the people working either above you, below you, alongside yourself. How, for you, have you been able to be open to receiving some feedback from people around you?
I think for me, I've always implemented pretty flat structures in the business. And the reason being is because in my businesses, there's no hierarchy, right? I don't care whether you're the cleaner or whether you're the CEO, we're all the same. And whether you're a cleaner, you've got your own personal goals. And whether you're a CEO, you've got your own personal goals. So I think it's critical to have aligned vision. I think that's a big one that we always talk about, and values. I think if you tick those 2 boxes, as you know, you'll have a pretty strong culture in a business. So I think keeping a very flat structure, I think running as lean and as mean, I call it, as possible now is critical because of the financial markets, and allows you to have a really strong, I'd rather have, really strong 10 to 20 member team than have an okay 200 team member team, and having a very strong bond, connection and relationship where feedback to you and feedback to them is critical.
And look, you've talked about values, and values, as you said, in a business, even more so now than when you and I first met a decade ago, is so crucial for that alignment piece to be able to achieve the business goals, but also their personal goals. Values, though, can be quite hard to identify in alignment in an interview process, in that recruitment process. What are you doing in your team to be able to look and identify those people that are values aligned?
What we like to do is like regular retreats, for example, and open table conversations where we have post-it note discussion where people bring ideas to the table. And then based on the ideas that we bring to the table, you can sort of bring the values to the table as much as possible. Keep reiterating the mission and vision of the business and the values, and have them everywhere across your business to ensure that it's front of mind with everything that we do. Now, as your team grows, that becomes a lot more challenging. One of the biggest challenges in business is ensuring that everyone buys into the vision and mission as you grow as a business. But that's where you have strong leaders that you bring in and executives to ensure that, we pass that on to all the team. So I think number one is have it everywhere, the values and mission and vision. Understand the person in depth to ensure that they align with that by asking the right questions, okay, and listening and actively listening. And then even giving them tasks and ways that would tackle business challenges to be able to understand what they would do in a specific situation, to understand whether their values align.
And great pieces of advice. And you talked about the scaling for a minute there. Let's focus on your time at Openpay for a minute. You've gone now, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but my memory is 3 employees to about 250 in roughly 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty rapid growth.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
How do you hire 10 people a week?
How do you do it? And let's focus on some of the challenges. What challenges? Because that's hard to keep and hire all the right people for that type of rapid growth.
Yeah, so Openpay was, I call it a roller coaster. So many ups, so many downs, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of hair loss. It was a crazy ride, right? And why it was a crazy ride is because while you're trying to find product market fit in a market that's moving so fast, in an industry that doesn't even exist and you're creating the industry, it's 1 in a million, right? You never get that opportunity. And so I think at Openpay there was massive challenges and there was challenges every day. I think what we did really well is focus 90% of our attention on things that were going wrong in the business rather than the other way around, which a lot of businesses do. They double down on things that go really well. The other thing I think was getting the right talent, recognizing when you don't have the right talent very quickly and removing them from the table and from the business as quickly as possible, right? Because we did have a few hires that were quite toxic to the business and it was unfortunate that we had to let them go. But what we did really well is headhunt the right talent from businesses that were at the same stage as us that went through rapid growth. So, for example, we had a head of marketing, for example, that came through Uber, right? And this was when Uber was like 10 employees in the US. So we had hunted her, brought it into the table. So people with very relevant experience with the right timing to lead the business. And then from there, it was a lot easier to hire the right people. In terms of scaling, one of the biggest challenges is obviously the business itself isn't a profitable model business. So we kept being reliant on raising capital all the time. And that was at the time where investors were throwing money at you, especially in an industry like this, right? The biggest challenge there was to be able to scale, even though we went to 200 employees at the time, to be honest, we probably needed 10,000 employees, right? But what we did really well is we were able to scale and line up strategic partnerships with external stakeholders that allows us to go in from one out to many strategic partnerships very, very quickly and adopt big enterprise deals, right? Very quickly. And the reason we're able to do that because of the right network and the right people and the right ways to do business.
Having the right people on board is so crucial. You talked about those people that were toxic, and I think a lot of what we hear and I hear in my role is the CEO keeps that person here because they're high performing, even if they're toxic. For you, it sounds like you were quite quick and swift to go, nope, you're toxic. You're not coming on this journey with us.
Yeah.
How do you navigate those conversations that, you do identify there's someone toxic, but maybe they are high performing?
Sure.
Now what? How do we approach that?
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, at that point, we brought in a chief of culture and people, and then we had about 5 team members just in HR within the first year because we had to hire about 10 people a week. Ultimately, I think sitting them down, recognizing what they're trying to achieve, even being accommodating to the point where, hey, we've got a network or we've got a contact and we're able to find you and allocate you somewhere else. Again, you've got to be careful because if they're toxic to your business, they might not fit necessarily a similar business. So getting under the hood, being gentle about it and just making sure that it's in the best interest of the business. So everything we do today, right, we've got shareholders involved, okay? And number one is your shareholders, right? So you would know your dad is a big shareholder in a lot of companies. So it's critical to ensure that everything we do in the business, and that is removing toxic people, for example, is one element that puts your shareholder in number one, because otherwise it jeopardizes the business.
And let's talk about where you're at now. So in a very, what I would say, purpose-led organisation,
Yep.
talk to us a little bit about it and your role as a leader in that business. Where's your focus?
Bestop, I came about, I was sharing an office with a beautiful female founder called Priska. The business was originally came out of Monash Accelerator program. It then basically got through into StartMate, which is a big accelerator program in Australia, funded by Blackbird Ventures. That business got funded, which is great. Unbelievable products with very much a mission and a vision to eliminate 1 billion plastic bottles by 2035, right? So everything we do in that business is purpose-led. Now, when I joined that business, I saw a gap in the sense that it was a product-led founder, okay, which a lot of businesses are, but commercially wasn't sound at the time. And so I saw an opportunity where I could turn things around, and I came in, I bought 50% of the company, and now we're valued about $6 million 2 years later. It's been a crazy journey, and it's been a great one as well. Tough market, I'm not going to lie, but we're going through it and we're getting through to where we need to go. Beyond Bestop, obviously, I'm involved in about 14 ventures. I don't touch them all, obviously. I advise and I sit on the board. But one exciting venture now is a tech development project or company where we develop products, and I own a large proportion of that company because we're seeing a lot of opportunity in AI, which I know is a hot topic that everyone talks about.
It's a very hot topic.
Very hot topic. And the direction I'm going in now is more business acquisition. So acquiring very strong, profitable businesses that are led by a very strong team that are fully under management.
Let's talk about your commercial focus for a minute, because you have an extremely sound commercial astute and business acumen. A lot of leaders don't have the same traits or qualities. There are leaders out there that I've connected with that are very people focused, and they understand people and they understand communication, but at times they struggle to understand the commercial area of a business and the financial area of a business. What advice would you give to those leaders that aren't necessarily as commercially astute as yourself to gain some of that skill or to learn some of that skill, because it is so crucial to have that knowledge in an organization?
Absolutely. Love that question. Number one, recognize that you're not good at it and stick to what you're really good at. Okay, number one. Number two, bring someone who's way better than you in that area very quickly, incentivize them really well, and align on the vision and mission and drive hard. If we're talking about learning the skill, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of dedication. And there's obviously ways to learn that, you know, through mentors and through bring the right advisory team members. So, for example, at Bestop, because we didn't have beauty-specific experience, we brought in an executive from L'Oreal, who's an advisor on our board, country manager from KO, which, you know, bought Bondi Centre for $450 million. We brought the founder of Baby Bunting, who brings bottom-up approach. You know,
it's a dream team.
Dream team. And that's what it's about, bringing the right people to the table and building that really strong dream team and getting the right advice. And so I think recognizing that you're not commercially sound, recognizing that there's someone better than you that needs to come into that seat, and being able to really align with your vision and bring them on the journey that you've been on since founding the team, the business, I think is probably the way I would go about it, because that's just a faster, more productive, better way to do things.
Yeah, amazing. Now let's get a bit vulnerable.
Let's
go. And I
go.
feel like we can go here because I've known you that long.
Yeah.
You talk about learning. You talk about failures and challenges and knowing your strengths and areas for improvement. What areas of leadership do you look to fill those gaps with other people because you recognize yourself that you don't potentially have the greatest strengths in those areas?
So you've known me for a long time. I did a nursing and paramedicine degree, and I very quickly realized that I can't empathize very well. Like one pivotal moment that comes to mind was when I did a placement at an oncology center, the Alfred, you know, Ward 6, for those that don't. I remember it like it was yesterday, right? And there was a guy that came back from Thailand with a rare red blood disease, 40 years old. Within 24 hours, he had to come back and passed away. Literally, the whole family came from New Zealand. And all the nurses got around the family and really empathized. And it was a very emotional day. And I just couldn't go up to family members, hug them. And that's when it sort of clicked and I went, I don't feel like I'm the right person for that job, right? And at the time I was working at Telstra doing enterprise and government sales, and I did really well from a sales perspective. And that's when I started looking at combining the two. So I think empathizing is one that I always try and work with and work towards. And I think that's by having conversation with people that are open to opening up and also allow me to open up, right? And the more I practice that, the better I get at it. But obviously, when it comes to hiring the right talent and the right people to hire people and understand people better than me, I look at people like you, for example, that could really empathize.
It's got to be hard though, because especially with where society is changing now as well, and the culture we're living in and the environment we're in, people are looking for empathetic leaders. They're looking for empathetic leaders to understand not just what they're going through at work, but they want people to be able to open up about what they're going through in life. Yeah. So for yourself, recognizing that's an area for improvement, and let's say there's someone else out there listening to this, resonating with this and going, yep, my hand's up and I don't have that empathy. What advice would you give them to be able to practice empathy?
Sure. Always ask the question, why? So when I speak to someone, I want to know genuinely and as deeply as possible why they're doing what they're doing and what are they trying to achieve. For me, a lot of the stuff I do is because either I recognize I'm good at it, for example, or it's commercially sound for me, right? That's not empathizing, let's be honest. So when I get to speak to someone, I try to dig deeper and put all the commercial stuff aside and understand why is it really important for you to do what you're doing, right? And continuing to ask why and delving deeper and getting the answer and delving as deep under the hood as possible is what I try and do to improve that skill.
And how do you stop in those moments of being a leader where you need to make crucial decisions, and especially being a founder as well, you have to make strategic business decisions. How do you take time to pause to think about how that's not only impacting the today, but also impacting the potential future?
So we look at, first and foremost, what impacts does a decision have short term, okay? Taking the time to work through it and understand it from all different angles. And it's almost like a chess game, right? Like what happens next? Understand what happens after that move and after that move. And that obviously becomes then an element that becomes more visible as you progress the decision. I think it's also critical while you're doing that not to take too long on decisions, right? Because a lot of the time there's opportunity costs. But now I've learned to take more time with my decisions. When I negotiate, I do it strategically and I take my time strategically. And it actually becomes an advantage when negotiating a deal. And then what does it mean beyond this specific deal or this specific negotiation, this specific decision? So I look at always like 5 to 10 years in front. Then what does it mean 20 years in front, right? So this is what's going to mean short term, but it's always going to mean 5 years, this is what's going to happen, or 10 years, this is what's going to happen. I also don't want to be selfish when I'm making decisions. So I want to understand what impact does it make to other stakeholders. I think that's critical. And I want to make sure number one has to be always is win-win-win for everyone. Like that to me is my motto in life. Everything you do has to be a win-win-win. Otherwise, you'll never work.
You talk about obviously winning. We're talking about people. We're talking about your failures, challenges, empathy. Where you are now and your team, what are you recognizing for not only the today, but the future in people? And what challenges do you see are going to be coming in the next 5 years to do with people in your team?
Love that question. I think not just with people, but with companies, I'm seeing that people are very worried about cash at the moment. Previously wasn't a focus necessarily. It was more purpose-led. Everyone went in with a mind of, am I aligned with my vision? Am I aligned with my purpose? Does it meet my needs, etc.? Now people are going with financial needs. And that's because the financial markets aren't great. And they're not going to be great for a while. So, we're getting people than unpaying bills, like companies, and we've never had that, pushing out payment terms. So we're feeling it in the market, and we're seeing people make decisions based on what is their salary. And I know for you, for example, when you interview a lot of people, I'm sure salary is a big conversation and always has been. But I think, and I believe, genuinely believe, that it will become more of a conversation moving forward.
Definitely. I think a lot of people with the current climate, they are challenging themselves on taking what may not be the right decision for the next role, which is that purpose-led decision, feeling connected to the cause. And they are choosing to take the role that's offering a higher, more stable income. And for you as a founder, I can imagine that change, or where we are at the moment, could be quite hard for you to find the right people.
It's massively challenging. We're trying to learn every day through that and navigate through that. Again, it comes down to taking your time with the decisions and getting to the core of people. So, yeah, money aside, and I'm okay to pay people more. I've got no problem with that. And I think incentivizing the right people is critical, right? But I want to know that they're the right person because of the core. So that's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be a challenge for all businesses. We are seeing a lot more headcount cuts. And that's because of technology and AI. And I think there's going to be a lot of disruption in the market. I think we'll see probably the first billion-dollar company built with one employee over the next 5 years.
Let's talk about it. Let's go to AI. And you're quite knowledgeable in this area of AI, more so than I am, that's for sure. I deal with people. How are you looking to incorporate AI as a leader in your leadership?
We look at every touch point of our customer journey across all our businesses, and we're basically saying, where can we implement AI to become more efficient, make better informed decisions, and make better informed, quicker decisions as well, right? And so as a business owner, I think it's critical to have a look at each touch point of your customer journey and go, what AI tools can we implement here to take to market? I'm seeing businesses that are wanting to implement AI tools that don't exist or are available, and they're genuinely considering going, okay, well, we'll invest to bring that product to our business and then commercialize it, which becomes an interesting conversation because all of a sudden the focus shifts from your own business to then becoming another venture, which is pretty cool. But I highly suggest, I think it's not going to replace jobs, I mean, it might replace some jobs, etc., but it's a tool like any other tool to be able to just be more productive and just being able to be more efficient as a business with less people.
And I think a lot of leaders that I speak to as well, they do at times struggle with creating efficiency and putting process in place as well. And you talk about yourself being up at 4:30 and very quite structured in your day and how you lead as well. For those leaders that aren't naturally people that are structured or, organically, they're not people that enjoy process, what advice or tips would you give them to bring a bit more of that structure into their leadership style? And do you think it is needed for all leaders?
I'm seeing people getting better results, better outcome with a lot less time. So I think that's an interesting element. And when we talk about balance, I think you could have more balance today than you've could have in the past, personally. And that's thanks to tech and solutions out there and bringing great people to the table. What you need to do, okay, is I look at it this way. If you're a person that isn't necessarily structured and structure isn't necessarily important to you, I don't have an issue with that. I think that's fine. And I think you should stick to what you're good at and what you enjoy and what you believe is the right approach. I think you need to be open-minded and try things and adopt. And if they don't work, right? So we have team members in our team, for example, that don't work before 10 a.m. And
they're my kind of people.
Your kind of people, that's right. But they work at 2 a.m., which at 2 a.m. I'm on my 20th dream, So that's okay. I think as long as you recognize what you're good at, when you're the most efficient, productive, that's fine. Whereas, 10 years ago, you probably have a different conversation.
As a leader, how do we stay motivated if we've got the pressures from stakeholders and we've got financials that aren't going where we want them to be going? We've got people that, perhaps we're having to make some difficult decisions and some redundancies as well. How in yourself are you staying motivated through all of that change?
It's challenging, especially in a content world where there's so much out there. You know, people get pulled in 100 different directions. There's a focus pandemic. We know this. For me, it's cutting out the noise, staying to the plan, reviewing my goals, right, regularly, and creating a three task list every day, right? Not more, not less, that must get done today. Whether the world's on fire, you need to do those 3 tasks that will get the needle moving. At the end of the day, you come back, make sure you've done them, and write down 3 wins for the day, 3 things that weren't necessarily good, and 3 things you want to achieve tomorrow. If you come back to that core, that to me, that keeps me focused, right? When we talk about content and stuff that's out there, I just listen to what I think resonates and aligns, and I try and double down on 1 or 2 rather than, so like I've read hundreds of books, never used to read, never used to like it. I read more now than I've ever done before, but now rather than reading 100 books, I'll read 3 over and over again that I really resonate with, that I think are very valuable, that I can implement in what I'm doing. And if I'm seeing great results, great. If I don't, then I just change it.
Try it again. I love that approach. I use the rosebud thorn approach, where the rose is what's worked and what do I want to achieve, and the thorn's what hasn't worked, and the bud is what's blooming, what's coming, what am I looking forwards to.
That's cool. That's a great way to do it. I love that.
It's nice and visual.
I'll need to try it. I'll need to try it.
What's the bud for you? What's up next?
Great question. I'm really looking forward to narrowing down my focus and really getting clear on doing 1, 2, or 3 things really, really well rather than stretching myself too thin. I've learned the lesson. It was an expensive one, and time more so expensive than money. So focus on 2, 3 key things that I'm looking to focus on. And acquisition is one that's really interesting to me. So really recognizing ways where I'm no longer that person that needs to be involved in the day-to-day. So recognizing really strong teams, recognizing strong, profitable businesses that are trading in very challenging times, which means they'll be even more profitable in less challenging times, and doubling down on that and being able to create a really strong ecosystem where, like now I've got companies that essentially trade amongst each other, so I'm a shareholder of an Airbnb business that buys Bear Sup, which is a hand wash and body wash, that also buys gin and vodka from my gin and vodka company. So all of a sudden becomes like an ecosystem. So I think that's pretty interesting. So that's the direction I'm looking to move in.
Yeah, amazing. And if we look and, maybe someone listening to this is a Michael from a decade or more ago and, a hotshot guy ready to make his mark in that ecosystem, what type of tips are you giving that person?
Work hard, work smart, more so than, focus, get clear. Don't make the mistake of stretching yourself too thin. We get very excited about different opportunities. Stay true to yourself and making sure that everything you do aligns with that, and learn as much as possible from people that you look up to, and learn as quickly as possible and as much as possible as you can. And if you do that, I think you'll do great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was so good to see you after a decade and look at your leadership journey and how far you've come. And I'm excited to watch the next ventures pop up, that's for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Great to catch up again.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us in the Leadr Lab. We hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did bringing it to you.
We have plenty of inspiring leaders and their stories to share. Ensure you don't miss these episodes by subscribing wherever you're listening to this. Links to today's guest are in the show notes, and you can find links to our socials there too.